Can everybody hear me? Let me know if the beard gets in the way. I can hold it directly. Sometimes it scratches. So I'm PJ Smith. I'm a full-time licensed fishing guide in the Wisconsin area. Obviously, I run in the driftless, but I also run a drift boat also in the driftless, which is kind of weird. Not a lot of water there that's big enough for it, but I've added a raft. We do a lot of smallmouth pike and musky as well on some of the larger rivers throughout our region. Been fishing most of my life, so over 50 years. Started fly fishing probably almost 30 years plus, and just fell in love with it. Really like being out of doors, and decided to kind of go into it. Was a part-timer. I lived in the Chicagoland area. I worked outside. I was a heavy equipment operator, supervisor. And so I worked 5 days, jump in my truck, go work for the weekend, jump back in my truck. And my wife also is kind of in the industry. She works for Orvis. She works remotely now. She actually used to be the fly fishing manager and then manager at Orvis Madison, which is since closed down. But now, if you call with a broken rod and you get a woman on the line, it's probably her because she's the only woman working in that department. So we're really into fly fishing. We got engaged on Timber Coulee, and then we honeymooned out in Montana at the Fly Fishing Conclave, and then backpacked into the Beartooth Mountains and fishing the whole time. So to say we're not, we're pretty into fly fishing. That's and it's kind of cool having a wife that knows how much rods cost, so I don't have to lie about it. So if I ever go, she'll know how to sell everything properly. So yeah, we're going to talk about upping your game, improving your skills. Awesome. Thank you. Yep. So basically going to that next level. A lot of you guys have spent a lot of time out of doors, fly fishing and that. And you kind of hit this level, but then trying to get to that next level. And over the years, I've kind of put things together to just kind of help people get over that hump. Biggest thing is just being truthful with your skills. I've had some clients come out with me and they're like, oh, I've been fishing for 40 years and all that. And then come to find out they fish 2 days a year for 40 years. That's not 40 years of experience. That's barely a month. So, and usually if you do that, you completely forget everything in a year and you start all over. So just be truthful with your skill level. If you're out there day casting and that, you're upping your game all the time. I like to write down my goals as best I can. It's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of like being at a real job, having to, the seasonal, your performance evaluation. But it's a really good way to just kind of keep you on track. You've written it down, you know what's going on. And that, asking for help. You guys are all members of TU here. There's a ton of knowledge throughout all these clubs that are throughout the United States. And that's a really great way of getting some knowledge, getting some help. There's a lot of trips that happen. Also, don't be afraid to get a guide. I have a lot of people that have fished for years in the driftless. They finally decide to get a guide, me, and they get done with that day. They're like, I learned more in this 8 hours than I did for the 5 years I've fished up here. So sometimes it just takes having somebody else help you out, show you some different ways, different techniques for fishing and that. And don't be afraid to take classes. There's a lot of shops around here that are offering classes. We offer classes in that too. It's a really good way to help you improve those without having to necessarily get a guide. And then trying to achieve your goals. Biggest thing is for that is just changing your habits. If you fish the exact same way all the time, you're not going to change. It's really hard. We don't always like change. If you fish the same water the same way every time, you're going to be at that same level. Not that it's a bad thing. You'll probably still catch fish. But it's just you've got to make some changes if you want to go up in, your level. I always say it's kind of like just adding a lot of arrows to your quiver, whether you're spay fishing, bow and arrow cast, all those different things. Euro nymphing, we like to give that a hard time. Same thing with Tinkara, but it's all a skill set. So, something to change. You may not like it. You may be like, you know what, I only like dry fly fishing. That's fine too. I always like to tell people a lot of fly fishing is all mental. It's usually about 90% mental and about 10% muscle. That thing on top of your head can be your best and worst enemy at the same time. We all get worked up and we're like, oh, those fish are super finicky. Biggest thing with that is their brain's the size of a split pea. Ours, I think, are a little bigger. So let's not give them too much credit. So also invest in yourself, spend a little money. It's a really good way of kind of getting into it, just like golf and all that, and then having fun. So preseason casting practice, this is probably the biggest thing with guides if you talk to them, and I've talked to people from Alaska all the way down to Florida. This is one thing we always ask you guys to do, and it's a rarity that it ever happens. On that same note, there are people that will do it. It's super fun. Get out in the lawn, especially on days that you can't get to the water. 15 minutes going out, trying to hit a small target on the lawn will be huge, especially in the driftless. It's hitting that spot in the spot. Some people will use a tape measure, etc. You don't even need that. If you just have some cones, you can go out and, when your lawn gets green enough, I think you guys are still starting to green up, but when those dandelions come out, start trying to hit those dandelions. That's a small spot. When you can start hitting those dandelions, that's amazing. Because then when you go to the water, you're going to be able to hit such a smaller spot. And that's going to help you get into really tight areas, working around obstacles and that. So next, it's my wife here. Put in a pretty good fold on, that's actually one of the new H4s, the Quattro. So we were lucky enough to get on an early program with that to test them out, see what we thought of them. But work on new casts. If you're used to just doing a regular cast, try to vary it up. Roll cast. To be honest, where I'm at, roll cast is probably #1 cast that I use. Don't do too much double hauling and that, but if you are in an area that you can double haul, practice your double haul. And I will tell you, it's easier to practice all your casts in big, wide open areas than it is when you finally have to get into an area and do a roll cast. A lot of people will be like, oh, I only roll cast when I'm in really tight water. Do it when it's really open and you'll get that much better. You'll see how much more efficient it can be. Then like Belgium cast, space style casts, bow and arrow cast, we've all seen it. YouTube can be your friend at times. Just kind of watch. Orvis has some great YouTube stuff out there that you can use to help you. Again, taking classes, getting a casting instruction can go a long way with helping you up your game that way. So improving your stamina. I don't know if you guys have been out on the water lately, but usually my first few trips, I feel like I've been run over by a truck. My legs are sore, pushing all that water. A lot of it has to do with I was sitting at home not doing much. But need to build up your strength, build up that hand strength to handle those rods. Most of the time, if you're fishing for trout, they're really tiny rods, 3, 4, maybe a 5, which isn't a huge deal. But if you start getting into smallmouth and that, those are usually 7, 8, and then musky, like a 12. All big stuff, that'll take a lot out of you. So build up that hand strength, build up your muscle memory. Getting out and casting is a great way to build up. Going on walks, it doesn't have to be like you're going out and lifting like Rick does all the time. But when you really look at it, better health, you're going to be enjoying that trip much more. Little story, my wife went up to Labrador, Canada, fished 7 days straight. Smallest fly rod she was using was, I think, maybe a 7. So it was 7, 8, 9, and a 10. 7 days. Most people, they'd be done in 3 days. Her big thing was she went and worked out every day before that trip. She was going to the gym. She was strengthening her hands. So she was able to do all 7 days, and that's 8 to 10 hours every day of casting in the wind, Labrador, Canada. It's cold, mosquitoes. It's tough on you. So especially if you're doing like big trips, take the time, work out. You're investing all that money into a trip. Might as well enjoy it. Research. Again, I come from the age of reading a lot of books or whatever, but the internet came along and it was way easier to find a lot of stuff. So when I'm looking up different places to fish, different products, etc., the web can be your friend. It can also be a bad thing. One, it takes a long time. And two, guess what? There's no a lot of not good information. There's nobody really monitoring that. So be aware when you're looking at YouTube stuff, make sure it's a quality product, put by people. I mean, I've seen some of the casting stuff that's out there, and these people are not very good casters. I really like the Orvis ones. There's a lot of other people that are doing great stuff. There's some spay guys out there that are amazing casters that have some stuff out there. And then obviously Instagram and Facebook, again, take it with a grain of salt, but it's a good way to learn a lot, ask questions. It's a great way to meet up with people. I met Rick kind of through Facebook and Instagram, same thing with Evan over there. So again, it's a great way to communicate. It kind of makes that gap. I live down in the Driftless. These guys live up here, even though I come up this way. But it's a good way to kind of branch out a little bit. So scouting water, years ago, I spent a lot of time scouting water anytime I could. I like to scout water when it's wet and rainy and the rivers are blowing out. Hasn't happened in a while. We're all praying for rain. I think I'm going to have to sacrifice, I don't know what, but pretty soon we are getting a little bit here and there, but we definitely need more. But I take that time. If I was already up there and it blew out the rivers, I would spend the rest of that time up there scouting water. Great way to find areas, one, that don't blow out as easy. You'd be amazed in the Driftless. You go over a couple ridges, that water didn't get touched. It's amazing how the storms will go through differently in the driftless area like that. So fish new water, that's another big thing. If you fish the same water, the same every time, that's where your level is going to be. It's great. You'll be able to catch every fish in a, 1 mile stretch of water. You'll know it intimately. But guess what? There's a whole nother world out there. I try to fish new water all the time. When my wife and I were first starting up there, we probably did about 2 or 3 years fishing pretty much the same water over and over again. She finally was like, be kind of cool to fish different water. Well, that started that whole thing. Anytime we went up there for the weekend, at least one of the days we were up there, we would fish new water. Then it got to be both days we fished totally new water. You do that for 20 plus years. Guess how much water we found? A lot. We fished pretty much from, well, most of the Wisconsin side of most of the driftless waters. And we're still finding new stuff. So it can take over a lifetime up there and through this region and that. Technology has come a long way. There's some awesome apps and Google Earth that you can use. It's a great way to kind of save driving around, save a little bit of that fuel. But again, nothing works better than actually getting out there and actually getting on the water. I see a lot of it on Instagram or Facebook. I'm new to this. Don't tell me your hot spots, but give me a few areas. Guess what? Jump in vehicle, drive to an area. Sometimes you're gonna zero out. Sometimes you're gonna catch fish. That's the way to up your game. If it gets handed to you each time, you're not gonna build that skill up. It's just gonna be handed to you. So take the time, invest in it. That's really the best way to learn. It's trial and error. Yes, sometimes it's really hard, but guess what? First off, you picked fly fishing. Fly fishing is one of the hardest things to do. It's not easy. If you want it easy, pick up a spinning rod. Go after them that way. So I like to keep a journal. I'd like to say I keep it really well, but at times I get towards the end of the season and I'll just blank out. I do like to keep them though. It's a good way to keep track of what you've done. It's a great way of remembering stuff. We're all aging every day. We can't always remember stuff, or it helps us remember what someone really said as opposed to what we think they said. I like to keep notes from tips that I get from other anglers. It's a really good way if someone's like, telling you their secret spot. Again, if they're sharing it to you, don't share it to others. They're being nice to share it to you. Again, there's not too much out there that's totally a secret, but courtesy wise, I also like to use it keeping track of weather conditions. That's a really good indicator. You'll start noticing patterns, like a post-storm or a pre-storm. The fishing's always better. Trying to, sometimes I'll even check barometric pressure. It's a huge thing with fish. Maybe not so much with trout, but definitely with other fish. It can be a big thing. Depending on, like around us, we have some rock faces on our water. Which way those rock faces are facing, they can actually help warm the water a little bit quicker, hence bug life, especially in the cold months. So keeping track of that, again, if you have 5,000 waypoints in your head, you're not going to keep them all right. So that's using a journal is really helpful for that. I also like to do it for keeping track of my gear. I run a lot of different rods. I try to keep it as simple as I can, and I'm usually pretty good with that. But I like to keep track of when I put a fly line on, because the age of that fly line, like I go through fly line about every 2 years, if not sooner, depends on how much work I'm getting. So with that, I also, what rod and reel combo work best for the line that I'm using too. I've kind of started just whittling it down, even though I run all kinds of, I run from basically a 1 weight all the way up to a 12. That's a lot of rods to keep track of. So I do try to keep an inventory of everything. Dates helps you when you decide you need to trade out some stuff. And that ups your game too. You'd be surprised getting a brand new fly line, especially if you haven't changed your fly line out in the last 5 years. I assure you, line today is 1,000 times better than line just 5 years ago. Oh my gosh. So, all right. Change your techniques. Rip streamers sometimes, nymph fish, upstream, downstream, taking float trips, night fishing. All of that is different techniques. If you're used to just going out and throwing dry flies, that's great. I love dry fly fishing, but I also like the nymph fish. I also like to throw streamers. Like my big goal this year is actually to get in a little bit tougher areas and throw bigger streamers for bigger trout. The other thing I'm trying to do is more Euro nymphing. I've never really done it, but it's one thing that my wife and I are like, you know what, we need to get much more proficient in it, because we do have people ask about it at our classes and stuff. So yeah, change it up. Don't be afraid to try something new and different. How many of you guys hopper dropper fish here? Is it pretty standard for most people? How many of you guys just nymph fish? Do you guys just nymph fish and all that? How about ripping big streamers? So a lot of few guys ripping big streamers. How about night fishing? How many guys don't even want to think about night fishing? So night fishing can be kind of scary if you've never done it. It's not for everybody. I recommend going with somebody and trying to be fish somewhere you fished before. That's a huge thing. Make sure you get there during the day and then work your way into the night. Carry a headlamp, carry a backup light, whether it's another headlamp or another, just like a flashlight, so you can at least get out. Carry extra batteries. like, so yeah, so little things like that. Again, ask other people here. I mean, there's a lot of guys here that seem to have dabbled in everything, and then there's other guys that stick to dry or nymph fishing. So, but yeah, having different techniques is a huge thing. Taking a float trip for trout, most guys are so used to walk and wade. If you've ever been out west, that's a whole nother game. It's amazing when I get guys from out west, they're like, where are we going to cast? I'm like, well, we're going to learn the roll cast today. And they're like, oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, even for them, they're out in the heart of big, giant trout water and all that. And they come here and they're like, wow. So if you learn how to fish here in the driftless zone, you can fish anywhere. You go out west, you'll be like, man, this is awesome. I'm like a pro right now. So, all right. So challenge your ability. I like to try to fish unfamiliar water. This goes along with scouting new water, finding new water. Challenge yourself getting into areas that are really tight. I recommend I fish a lot in September and October when most people kind of wrap it up. As you can see, a couple of these pictures here, like we're kind of getting into the jungle. There's a couple spots of water that I fish that I have to walk through quite a bit of it before I even find a little foot-size hole to dump my fly into. I can hear the water, but you can't see it. A lot of times, that's when you're going to find out how accurate your stuff is and how much you can keep it together. It's not where I usually bring all my clients to fish unless they've asked for it or if they've pissed me off. No, just kidding. So, no, we definitely do not want to upset clients that way. But if you ask for it, we can definitely throw you in right into the fire. It's a great way of it. You learn to fish that way, everything else becomes easy. And then trying different times a year. I like to fish the opener in January, always different. I do kind of draw the line now. I'll fish the opener no matter what the weather is, pretty much. I think the first year it was 18 degrees. That was pretty chilly. The second year, the opener, it was 32 below zero. I said no, and I had gotten invited to go over to Michigan, so kind of worked out that way. But 32 below zero, that's it's not even worth getting out in the water because you could probably ice fish pretty well on it. But yeah, changing up different things. You know, we just had that all these winds coming through lately. My clients and I were out there fishing in that wind. It's really, it goes along with water really well. I have a lot of spots I know I can get low enough and out of that wind. So we were able to keep fishing and not be in too much wind. But as I tell people, I'm like, if you only fish the bluebird days, you're not going to get to fish a lot because there's not a lot of bluebird days out there. The other thing, just be mindful safety wise. You know, if you're fishing in the cold, have heat packs with you, have a way to, if you fall down in the river, have a change of clothes with you, a sleeping bag or blanket, whatever. So yeah, just be aware, make sure you're telling people that safety is a huge thing. I've heard a lot of stories of people not making it back. So we all want to make it back. Again, it's a fun sport. So invest in your sport to get better. This kind of goes along with being a member of your clubs. Spend a little money, volunteer some time. Take the little, you know, go to your local club. You know, like there's a lot of stuff going on out there. Like we were just talking about it, like Pebble Mine, the Menominee River, they're trying to mine. They're in the driftless. There's a lot of water issues going on. A lot of people will give me flack. They're like, oh, you just want it because you want to fish. I'm like, no, I actually want it so I have clean water to drink. I can always work another job, but once that water is tainted and all that, there's no getting that back always. Look at Flint, Michigan. Perfect example. Those people drink out of plastic bottles every day for the rest of their life while they live there. So be very aware of that stuff. So yeah, and when you give, you get. It's a great way. Again, this club here, you guys give a lot. You know, I'm looking at the cards in the back there talking about events and that. Just by helping teach them, that will up your skill level because you're talking about it. You're actually helping your mind remember how to do stuff. Helping a kid or another adult learn how to fly fish, always a good way. And then if you can, obviously giving money is helpful too, because not all of them run just on volunteer work. They also run on money. So new trips build new skills. This one's kind of self-explanatory. When you start fishing for different fish, you'll find out how similar they are and how different they are. These fish are all from kind of all over, although, well, that's Donna with, I believe it's, what is it? It's not really sure what kind of, it's up in Labrador, Canada. So kind of looks like a she-fish maybe, but yeah, it's not Alaska though. It's Labrador, Canada. And then obviously carp, musky, and then a snook down in Florida and stuff. Carp are something I don't normally target. They are a very challenging fish. There's a lot of guys that love to target them. And when you do make it happen, they are incredible. The biggest thing we've been getting lately now is that are very similar to carp, but they're actually largemouth buffalo. And they actively will chase down a streamer fly, which is so cool to see because you're like, wait, that's like a carp. You know, everybody thinks they're carp. Like, no, that's a largemouth buffalo, again, a native. And they fight as hard as any carp does. It's crazy. 7-weight rod, bent in half, super fun. And then obviously the carp, that one up there in the corner, that was like a mulberry eat on the top, which was pretty incredible. We were fishing mostly smallmouth, saw a bunch of carp clooping. I had the fly in my fly pad right there, and he just whips around. I cut off the fly, throw the other one on, tie it on. I don't even clip it because less time. He whips it out there. Next thing you know, he's hooked up. And that fish, it probably took about 5 to 6 minutes getting that thing in. That thing was just a crazy fighter. Super cool to watch it eat and then just take off. So yeah, changing it up. And that kind of stuff will actually help you become a better angler. One, just the skill in learning that different technique, it just varies it up. Obviously, musky fishing, same kind of deal. That's a huge mental thing. Being able to cast over and over and over and over and over again, possibly for years. It'll make you question why you do things. But the reward is amazing when you actually get to see that fish kill and attack your fly. It's awesome. And then obviously down in Florida, something cool that you can do to stay warm during the winter, go down. Snook are pretty amazing. They're kind of like largemouth bass on steroids 10 times. Like, they are crazy cool. So yeah, it's definitely super fun. You do find out fish are somewhat similar wherever they are. Saltwater fishing though is quite a bit different though. It's more of tides. And if you don't know or understand tides, it's really hard to do it yourself, but hiring a guide, that'll help you at least learn that kind of thing. So getting a guide. This is always a question I get. Why should I hire a guide? Aren't they really expensive? They are, but again, we're trying to help you basically up your game. We want you to succeed. I've had numerous times where somebody gets in my boat and I'm being more than just a guide. I'm a therapist. Sometimes I just row the boat. Sometimes I get guys in there that are super good. They know the stuff. And my job is just to row the boat and make them lunch. Other times I'm there to just give everything, all of my knowledge to them as best I can. And biggest thing, I get a lot of like, oh, that you're just saying that. And I'm like, no, honestly, when you have a good day, I have a good day. That's a huge thing. We are never there to either make fun of you, make you not succeed, or do bad. We always want you to succeed. We want you to catch fish. We want you to catch as many or big fish as we can. So trust us. It is a huge thing. If you trust us, we will work until who knows when. So again, listen, learn, and trust your guide. Can't emphasize that enough. We have, everybody thinks it's a glorious job. And oh, isn't that awesome? You get to work as a guide. My day, if I'm doing a day on the water, my day actually starts probably 2 days before that trip. I'm checking water, tying flies, making sure my gear's ready. I come pick you up. We go to the water, we work that whole day. I make you lunch. I take you home. Then I got to go home. I got to clean my boat. And then I got to start that whole program over again. So it's not always the easiest. A lot of people only see us for 8 hours. So it's not always the most glamorous job. If you look on Instagram, of course it is though. So it is fun. I wouldn't have left a really good paying job to, become a full-time guide. I definitely figured it was time, and I enjoy it so much. That's why I do it. So equipment, maintain your gear. That's a huge thing. Take the time to clean your equipment up. Boots and waders. If you're changing watersheds, you should definitely be cleaning all your stuff excessively well. There's so much stuff in the water now that can transfer. And it doesn't take too much time, especially if you clean up right after you're done. Same thing with rods, reels, line, etc. Cleaning those, taking care of them. I assure you, if you break a rod, make sure you go home, make sure you call and get the wheels rolling or getting it repaired. Most places right now, it's taking quite a while. A shout out to Orvis. They say they can get it done in 5 days because they can send the pieces. But on that same note, don't wait until you're ready to go on another trip and realize that your rod was broken the last trip you took. My wife doesn't like getting those calls because she's like, I can't help you. We try. She has actually sent stuff overnight, costs a lot of money. They've actually sent gear down to whatever lodges people are going to. But trust me, if you do it right after you break it, it's usually fixed and ready to go for your next trip. So there's always new and improved. Right now, new rods coming out. They are super awesome. Another shout out to Orvis, the new Helios, which we affectionately call the Quattro, is amazing. We actually got to see them break one. They're in at the rod shop. We took a tour last month. Pretty cool to watch that thing. It travels 110 inches. So it literally gets sucked up through the pulleys before it finally breaks. So it will literally touch the butt section before it starts breaking. So pretty impressive. Does it make you a better caster? No. Getting out and practicing makes you a better caster. So rain gear, etc., all that stuff. If your gear wears out, you're going to have a miserable trip. So if you take care of it, change it out. A lot of gear will last longer if you clean it properly. There's so much stuff out there now. Again, going to the website of, if you bought Patagonia or Sims or Orvis or whoever, they have a lot of video out there now to help you clean your gear and take care of your gear, recommendations, storing your gear. That's a huge thing. We try to store our gear hanging up, especially our waders, folding a pair of waders over and over again. Over time, those seams will start to break down. Then you'll get, that's where you're going to get that leak, the pinhole leak. Yes.
How do you like to clean your fly line and how frequently?
So getting to the, yeah, that last part. So I clean my lines pretty frequently, more than most people ever would. My trout stuff, I clean once a week. If it's dirty water, say I'm fishing streamers in that, it might be once a day. If I am fishing smallmouth pike and musky, it's twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. I can usually hear a client and I can hear that line starting to like make a noise through the guides. So I will stop, clean the line. There's like I use Scientific Angler line most of the time. They have a line cleaner. So I just use a couple pieces of ShamWow or whatever, little chamois cloth. You can get away with what am I thinking? Like I can't think of that cloth. Thank you. So microfiber cloth, a little bit of that on there. You just pull it through real quick. Doesn't take much. You just have to basically what's getting thrown out and maybe a little bit more. Usually, depending on my gear, I will take it all off the reel. I have a machine that takes it all off, do the whole line, back onto the reel, ready to go. I try to do that pretty frequently. One, those lines are 100, over 100 right now. That's a lot of money. I guarantee it, they work better by cleaning them. I assure you that. Now, a lot of them now have, like when you clean them, they actually kind of exude. You don't have to dress them like you did in the past. So you usually just cleaning them will bring back that surface, and then they come back to life really well. Again, having a line from 5 years ago to now, buy a new fly line. I'm not saying go out and spend all your money, but fly line right now is top of the top. The technology is amazing. It's so like it can be almost too specialized, but you know, and don't be afraid to ask your place where you're buying line. You know, if you're going into a shop, talk to the shop guys. Those guys know. They've been through training, they've been on the water, talk to guides. What are they recommending? Reach out to even the line manufacturers like Scientific Angler, huge wealth of information. Their website is phenomenal. You know, I like running Scientific Angler creek trout. That line is great. It's overlined and all the weight is up pretty heavy because I'm only casting maybe 20 feet at best. So I want it to load the rod. If I have a normal line that the head of it is 35 feet long, guess what? 15 plus feet isn't even affecting that rod. So using those specialized, you know, lines and that goes a long way. Plus they are so much slicker now. They're almost, it feels weird. Like they don't feel normal. The hard part with some of that is they're so specialized. Some of them are cold, warm, and hot. So make sure you get the proper one. Don't get a cold line and then expect it to work down in Florida during the summer. Because it just won't, yeah. And then the summer ones, you know, I accidentally ordered one that was a warm. Guess what? When I'm fishing musky with it, it just coils up. It's not very good. So now that's probably gonna go away. But again, my mistake trying to be, you know, like, oh, I thought it would work both ways. It doesn't always. So sometimes that specialized will hurt you, but most of the time though, the newer lines, better lines, and you should be able to get about, I'd say 5 years out of a line, give or take. For me, it's 1 to 2 years. Just because the amount of, now if you're not cleaning it, you're maybe getting 2 years out of it. And I've seen line come from clients and I'm like, this thing shot, it should have been cleaned 3 years ago. So sometimes just take a little time, clean it up. End of the season, I usually like to pull everything off. Sometimes you walk on it, you get a little nick in it. That'll allow water penetration. That's why it doesn't always float on top really well. So yeah, just kind of take care of your stuff. It'll take care of you. So new equipment, say you're doing a trip up to Alaska or going to Belize or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna buy this new rod. It's gonna make me catch all these crazy giant salmon and all that. Do yourself a favor, buy it early, practice with it. Going on your trip that costs thousands of dollars is not when you want to find out that you can't cast that rod. Or you have some sort of hitch in your elbow that you can't get rid of because the rod's too heavy for you. So try it, use it, cast what you're going to cast when you're on a trip like that. Again, a little different if you were coming down to the driftless and something doesn't work for you, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's not a $5,000 trip to Alaska that you've got to take 2 airplane trips and all that. But yeah, practice with your stuff. Don't use the first trip as your big trip and then find out it doesn't work. And then kind of as a side note there, the best gear doesn't make you the best caster. You've got to get out and practice with it. $1,000 rod doesn't make catching a fish any easier or better. So make sure you can use it. It goes a long way to practicing with it. Now, I will say using a good rod will help you get better. But once you do get better, you can use a medium grade rod and still be able to catch fish. Positive fishing attitude, PFA. I always tell my clients, I hope you brought your PFA today. You cannot buy it in a store. I've asked Orvis if they could order it for me, and they don't know what I'm talking about. But having the right positive attitude will go a long way to catching fish. I've had clients get out of the car and be like, oh, it's going to be a terrible day. They had a ride over. That just made my job 10 times harder because I've got to bring them out of that funk and hopefully get them into fish. They're not going to cast as easy and that. So positive fishing attitude goes a long, long way. All these people here have good positive attitude. My buddy Stan here, he's fished for me for a long time. He always seemed to have that grumpy face. That's why I put it in there. He's not always grumpy. He's super happy all the time, but he just has that look to him. So the woman right there with that smallmouth, she learned all about PFA. This was her birthday bass that she caught last year. We fished all day. She had had a few hookups, and I could see that PFA waning fast, especially after lunch, and she hadn't put any fish in the boat. We got to a spot pretty close to the end. We kind of pulled over into this area. I anchored up the boat. I knew there was a couple fish in this kind of heavy, crazy wood there. And I'm like, we talked it all over. We got her into back up to that positive fishing attitude. She made a couple of casts. The fish moved on that fly, but she missed it. Had to bring her back from wanting to jump out of the boat, change flies. Didn't get that fish right away, changed flies again. Finally hit one that thing really wanted, and it was pretty awesome. That's a 19.5-inch fish. Pretty incredible. There was some crying involved. Pretty cool though for her 70th birthday to catch that. And then the cool part was less than 50 yards down she caught a 17-inch largemouth. So that made her day. She was done. She's like, oh my gosh, PFA, because you could just tell she was waning. But sometimes just having a little pep talk, taking a little break. I have some guys want to fish every absolute second. Sometimes taking a drink of water, sitting back, kind of enjoying nature for a minute or two. Remember, don't always look at the water. Sometimes you got to look up. There's some cool things up there. But yeah, positive fishing attitude. So one thing that you can do to improve your outlook on it. Confidence. This is one of my buddies. He's like one of the most confident fishers I've ever had in my boat. Every time his fly hits the water, he knows he's going to catch a fish. And it's pretty amazing to watch him work it. He works that fly like that is the last time he's ever going to cast. And that's what he catches a lot of because of that. Having confidence in your guide, having, trusting yourself, the equipment that you use goes a long way. So have that confidence. Kind of goes along with PFA, but just having confidence, knowing that a fly is going to work, goes a huge, huge way. And last but not least, have fun so that you can smile and do the grip and grin if that's your thing. You don't always have to do a grip and grin. But the really big thing is just to have fun. This is an awesome sport that we work really hard at. It will help you up your game if you have fun. Because if you think it's like a slog through the jungle, it's not going to be fun and you're not going to get to that next level. So make it fun. If you have to take breaks, take breaks. Every once in a while when I'm fishing on my own, I like to just sit down. We call it the shore nap. And you know what? Just being refreshed, 15 minutes of taking a snooze on the bank goes a long way. But yeah, have fun. You start catching fish like that all the time, you're just going to have a great time. So that's me and my wife there. Check us out. TCTU.com. I also have stickers. I've got Swedish fish up there that they're eating over there. I've also got some business cards and all that. You can sign up for our newsletter. And that's us. If you have questions, and then, so along with those questions, one more right there. If you guys book by May 1st, you don't have to take the trip by May 1st, by the way. You can take 75 off one of our trips, either walk or wade or a float trip. So great. And then we can go back to that other one if you want. So if you have any questions, let me know.
So the way we'll do that, so I'll field the question in the room first. Whenever you have a question, I'll repeat the question so the folks online can hear the question, and we'll let PJ give us an answer. Any questions? Yes. What's a Belgian cast?
So a Belgian cast.
The question is, what is a Belgian cast?
So it's a larger, wide, it's usually kind of a loop. I kind of equate it to almost doing a big open. Again, I'm not really the casting expert, the wife is. But it's more of a big open loop. Usually it's in tighter cover, so it's almost like a roll cast. You just kind of open it up. Usually helps you get larger flies out there. And that I know there's some guys here that are probably much more skilled in the casting. I think, yeah. So it's just a more open loop. It's not that tight laser thing. It's just a more easier thing. It works great if you've got a really big fly that you it's probably too big for the rod you're using and all that. So something with that, you would actually shorten up your leader a little bit and then make that bigger open cast. If you really start watching a lot of people, that when you see them trying to cast, or say like a like a Euro style, where they're using a little more weight on there. You've got all those flies and then the lead. You've got to keep that all kind of just going in one big loop. Because if you went back like that and then pulled too fast, all of that's going to collapse on itself, get knotted up, and then be a mess, land in the water. And then if you're Euro nymphing, it's going to take you 5 hours to untie all that stuff. So, big open loop.
Okay, another question here?
Yeah, can you give us the top 5 streams in the southwestern Wisconsin?
I
Okay, so the
can.
question is, somebody wants to know the top 5 streams in southwest Wisconsin.
So my best answer to that is I'm offering $75 off the trip, and I will take you to some of those. If you do a couple days with me, that will definitely probably get you about 4 of the top.
Chris?
There's a lot of streams everywhere throughout the driftless. They all are actually pretty good. There's not too much water that isn't good right in that Vernon County, Monroe County, and all that. I mean, most people all know the popular ones. I mean, it's the West Fork, Timber, and
How do you rank the Kickapoo?
Kickapoo's really good. It's an okay piece of water. It has a lot of traffic. It has a lot of pressure at certain times, and it is usually done with fish by about June. It just gets too warm in there. So those fish travel up into the tribs. So it's a piece of water. There are good days and bad days for sure on some of it, but there's a lot out there. I mean, I've been going up there for almost 30 years and love it all. So
Okay, there was a question here, and then we'll go over there after.
Yeah, well, assuming we do finally get some rain here coming up, do you have some strategies for when the trout streams get high and muddy, and what do you like to do on?
So the question is like, when there's gonna be more water, what's the strategy when the water gets more muddy as far as fishing that?
So high muddy water, my keys for that, if you can see down into the water, say you go to a stretch and it's complete chocolate milk, like you put your foot in, you can't even see your foot once it goes past the laces, I would say go scout water. If you can see the rocks on the edge, maybe a little bit of the bottom, that's totally fishable. Those fish are very much adapted for that kind of water. Usually bigger fish come out because of that as well. Streamers, worm patterns, because they, it's all coming out of fields. That's why it's muddy. It washes worms in there. They're eating worms. Black, maybe red, maybe white sometimes. I usually go on the dark side, literally and figuratively. And then I'll start going to slightly lighter colors, like a good brown, like olive's not a great color in mud because it just disappears. They might be able to feel it. I also tend to go more like a profile. Do you guys know what a Buford is? Some guys do, I'm sure. Like a Buford's a big giant musky pattern. It's designed to push a ton of water. Well, guess what? You can make many tiny ones that push a lot of water. So bigger flies that push water, good pattern. Then they can feel it. Those fish have a lateral line. They can feel the push. So they can hone in on it. They can feel it. They try to find it. Their eyesight is definitely more adapted. Like when we look at stuff, we're like, oh, I can't see in there. Well, we don't live underwater like they do. They live there. they're more adapted to it. They can see stuff like that. So black, some colored up stuff, worms, big pushing streamer like flies. I definitely wouldn't go with little tiny like midge patterns. Probably not gonna be, because they can't see it. There's too much going on in that water. Fish the outer edges as opposed to the middle. Find water that's maybe pushed out a little bit. They will tuck over. Try to find water that they have a slight break, because they're going to utilize whatever it is. Big fish, that's why the big fish survive, the little fish don't. Little fish get swept away in the big floods. Big fish don't. Big fish do tend to come out in those kind of conditions because then they're not being seen from above. Because remember, it's all death from above, usually. So if they can't be seen from above, they eat pretty readily, so.
I think that was, okay.
So in your experience of fishing pressure, I'm familiar with northern Wisconsin driftless. I'm sort of familiar with Baroque middle. What about southern driftless in Wisconsin? Is that equally as heavily fished or similar? Is it worth my time going down?
So the question is, pressured area, so how is it, the southern driftless, so how is it pressured? Is it worth to go down there to fish?
So we all look at pressure differently, especially since after COVID. The waters right now are definitely a little more pressured than they ever have been. However, go out west and you'll see what real pressured water is. Go fish up in Alaska, close to the towns, you'll see what real pressure is. When you're standing side by side, that's real pressured water. We have a pretty good etiquette around here of moving to the next place to get in. You know, there might be 1 or 2 cars at a place. It's pretty open. Big thing with that is communication too. You pull in, same time another guy pulls in, guess what? Get out of your car, talk to him. I'm gonna go upstream. I'm gonna go downstream. Guess what? Not pressured. On that same note, down, you know, you get closer to say like the Madison area, it's gonna be a little more pressured, a lot more people right there. So on those streams that are there, they're probably gonna have a few more people at them. Fish times when people aren't always available, weekdays work great. Less people because everybody's working. Well, some people are working. I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of retired guys. So yeah, so kind of, you know, don't look at it, oh, it's so pressured. I mean, it's just kind of like when I hear the reports like, oh, the driftless is totally blown out. Well, that's maybe 2 rivers that are blown out. The rest of them are just fine to fish. You know, don't just cancel out just because, oh, I heard there's a lot of people up there, so I didn't go up there. That's where getting a guide comes in handy. I fish a lot of water that not a lot of people are fishing. I fish water that's definitely different. You start fishing those really tight areas, guess what? Not a lot of people are fishing those waters. So if you learn how to fish the tighter water, you've got a lot more water to fish. Because people that just roll up and they look at it and they're like, I can't fish that. And they go to the next one. I look at that water and go, I can do that. I'll work hard on that. So sometimes working hard gets you results. Going to the easy places, one, more people are going to fish them. We have to have kind of a lot of different water though, if that, so, because if you're new, you do need that easy water. So yeah, hopefully they kind of answered your question without being too vague. You know, you start going more south too, you're going to run into water that's a little warmer too. Some of that water as you get down there, it's going to have browns and smallmouth in it. So it's slightly different. And yeah, there's probably a few more people there. One, it's a little bit closer for people coming out of Illinois, coming over and fishing it. You know, they can do it in a day as opposed, like Baroque was farther. You know, it's a 4.5 hour run as opposed to down in, I can't, like Fenimore area, that's like 3.5. So they can get it done if they leave early enough. So there might be a few more cars there. So yeah, and again, if you're going to water and you see somebody there, guess what? Scout more water, find new places. Now it's not as it's less pressured.
Over there?
I've seen some projections over the years about the impacts of climate change, especially on brook trout, which is not coding particularly well. I was wondering if you've seen anything in your years on the water at your scale where you think you've seen anything that might contribute to climate change, you know, increases in water temperature, you know, high flows, low flows, drought, those kinds of things.
Okay, the question is about any things that he has seen impacting climate change and affecting the streams out there, especially for brook trout.
So I've seen some of the reports in the area. Our area is predicted in the next, I don't want to necessarily put numbers, but in that 10-year plus range, that things are dramatically going to change to mostly it's going to switch over to browns and probably smallmouth. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I do have a degree in forestry. So somewhat scientific knowledge. And then I do put a thermometer in all the time and I check my water temps almost hourly. If it's in the summer, I check every half hour. I have seen some of that water jump pretty dramatically. Some of it's because of they're opening up the canopy a little bit more. West Fork is a perfect example. I live really close to the West Fork. I have seen 80 degrees plus. It's not an unusual thing. Definitely in the last few years, it's definitely gotten hotter. Some of it is because the water coming out of, there's a dam that was broken during 2018. So that water's heating up in that semi-lake area, dumping in, causing that warm water to come down. There's a lot of that overstory got either torn out from the floods or has been removed for invasive plants and stuff. So it stays pretty warm. There are definitely springs that are coming up that help keep those trout alive in that water though. I try to tell everybody, give them a break. Yes, you dipped your thermometer in there. It said it was 55 degrees right at the head of that pool. Guess what? It's their only refuge for hundreds and hundreds of yards, if not more. I've had guys like, oh, I caught 100 fish out of there. It was awesome. I'm like, yep. And, you know, it's 90 plus degrees outside. You know, they're saying that for every fish caught, it's like a 10% chance of mortality. You catch 100 fish, probably 10 dead fish. And I've seen it. I've fished water after the heat waves and I'm seeing dead fish, probably because of overfighting, etc. They are starting to do a lot more research. Jason over there in La Crosse, they're putting out data loggers. So it's much more scientific than me putting in my thermometer and look at, so they're actually putting these data loggers in there. They're trying to find out how much is actually happening. So there's definitely science going in, trying to figure out what we can do. At times I've heard there's not much we can do because the water coming out of the ground is warmer. All I can say is like, vote, be smart about what you do with your, you know, be good to the world. It's Earth Day, by the way. So like pick up trash, be good. You know, we all, you know, no matter what we do, we always have an influence of, you know, me drinking this beer tonight. Definitely, you know, that had to come from grains and all that. So no matter what we do, we always have some sort of influence on what's going on. But for water temps, yeah, it's gonna change. Unfortunately, it's not gonna be for the best, but all we can do is just try to do what we can do and try to do the best. Like, be good to people and try to do the best, because this is it, you know, that water. And I'm seeing less of it too, by the way. Like, we've been in drought, and even those last few water hits that we've had, that's not totally filling the coffer up, because we didn't have water last summer, and we didn't get we had what, 5 to 6 snow events that didn't even really create a snowpack. That's definitely going to make things even worse. There's not going to be that water in there that's normally in there. So yeah, is it changing? Sure it is. Could it be cyclical? Absolutely. So yeah, that's why, you know, it may not be exactly the same. Maybe we need to be planting more trees. May not be the same of what was there in the past, but if you can keep that solar radiation down a little bit, it might help keep that water colder. You know, again, I've heard there's, you know, it used to be wide open all the time throughout the driftless. Now maybe we just need to put trees in there that are native, keep some of that water covered. Hopefully they'll survive a little bit longer.
More water for the fish.
You know what? So on that same note, I've talked to some of the DNR guys years ago, and his talk about that, everybody would be like, oh, you're putting all those lunkers in, it's so hard to fish there and all that. And he goes, my job is not to make it easier for you to fish. My job is to make more fish. Healthy fish need to be in protected areas. So on that same note, so yeah, it is tougher to fish. Guess what? If you can fish that water, upping your game,
What about
that water won't seem so hard.
Question for you. When you fish at night, what do you fish with? What fly are you using?
Usually at night, I'm using a top water. So I'm using a Moorish mouse, real easy pattern. So a Moorish mouse is, it's kind of, it's got deer hair and all that, semi-mousy looking thing. Fairly easy to tie. The other one that I tie for that also is the Master Splinter. That one's a super easy pattern. Foam, some rabbit strip wrapped around there, a little bit of tail. And I'm usually fishing, say, like a 5 weight, maybe a 6 sometimes. And I also have some indicator putty that is hit it with a flashlight. It kind of glows in the dark. There's some patterns now that are starting to get they're putting luminescence on top of the fly so they can see them. Honestly, they're so small, it's hard to, if it's pitch black, you can usually see it. I usually like it on my leader, so I know where my leader is. So I usually put it on at the area right there at the tip of the fly line and where the leader come in. So it's just like an indicator putty thing that's luminescent. And then I just carry a flashlight. The biggest thing with that is try not to shine the light in your eye or look directly. Like, I always try to turn away, shine it, keep it tucked in. That light's gonna hit that. Then your night vision is still pretty good, because you know when you're fishing at night, you don't have your headlamp on. And then I usually use a red or a green headlamp that will switch if I needed to, just for safety's sake. But you don't want if you use a green or red, it's not as evasive to your eyesight. Same thing with the fish.
Good advice. We'll take one more question in the room, then we'll go to the question online.
Yeah, so you were saying that you're trying to up your game with streamers on like the bunkers or like some debris and stuff like that. Let's specifically talk about trout now. I'm gonna streamer fish and I'm looking for big brown in these bunkers. What's your tactics? What are you trying to do? Are you doing a downstream, upstream presentation? A fly? What kind of rod?
So,
Hold on.
okay, go ahead.
So the question is going for big trout, right? Not the small one, the big trout.
Big one, yeah.
And that he has to cast where there's some lunkers and so forth. So what presented downstream, upstream, what fly line, what rod? So those are the questions.
All right. Great question. Most of the time I've gotten away with using pretty much most of my normal trout gear for what I've done. Upping my game, now we're talking about using at least a 6, if not a 7 weight rod for going after them. We're usually going into areas that are not designated trout streams. Because big fish require big food. They will still eat small stuff, but usually you have to start changing your tactics. If you look at guys that this is all they're doing all the time, they do not fish how normal trout guys fish. They are fishing more like musky predator style anglers are fishing. So they're fishing big rods. They're fishing pretty heavy tippet. So they're changing it up quite a bit. They are usually fishing down and across. One, that's to swing that big fly into the wood and be able to hopefully get it back out. That's the other thing. Don't be afraid to lose flies. Guess what? Flies are cheap. If you're going to catch fish, you have to put it in the junk. That's where they live. If you're not in the junk, you are not going to catch those big fish. Those big fish are in there for a reason. It's that death from above. Big fish do not, they still get preyed upon too. They also are where the little fish are. And little fish tend to congregate in those tighter areas. That being said, if you're fishing a spot that has like small 3-inch bait fish, guess what? Don't fish a giant 6-inch bait fish pattern. It's probably not going to be as ideal. Same thing with our little flies. Go and match the hatch, match the streamer to the fish you're going after. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that also being said, sometimes casting back upstream and pulling it fast enough to come out of the back of a wood section or rock section, whatever. So you're looking for those spots that really do look like gnarly and that are going to hold fish. Sometimes it takes a little trial and error, going into some areas, trying it out. That's where streamer fishing is great, because streamer fishing is a great way to search. Like you'll get a fish to swing on it. They're predatory. They will literally smash into a fly. That's the other thing. If you have a fish smash into a fly, don't throw it back into the same place. So a stunned bait fish does not go back into the same place and start swimming upstream. A stunned fish drifts downstream like it's dead. So cast downstream about 4 feet and dead drift your fly. Because sometimes that guy will circle around. Oh, I just smashed into that thing. I should go eat it now.
Any questions online?
Yeah, we have one right here. I have a favorite brand and type of fly line. Do fly line manufacturers improve the same fly line over the years? Or would it be better to try something new?
So that's actually a pretty good question. So fly line, I believe most fly line manufacturers are going to implement new stuff as best they can. Some fly lines have maybe stuck to the same year after year. But new technology, if they're not changing to that new technology, they might be missing the bus on that. Like there's the biggest thing now is the slicker rod or the rod slicker line that actually exudes out basically, it makes the line faster. That technology is in a few lines. Other people that aren't putting that in, maybe changing your line up. Again, it's kind of hard if lines are over $100 to just make that change. I recommend going to a shop, asking them if you can, some of them will maybe have testers that you can try. If they do have testers, ask if you can bring your own rod to try them out on, as opposed to their rods. One, you just want to make sure it works in your rod. If you've got a different rod than they normally run. So try that. I always like to keep an open mind, like some lines do great, some lines don't. We do kind of get very brand, I don't know what you call it, like brand stable. Like, you know, if you're a Yeti guy, you like Yetis, or if you like Orvis, you like Orvis, or something like that. So don't be afraid to look outside of that sometimes. Changing it up sometimes works good. Don't always just go off the advice of your friend. I tried this, you know, airflow line and it's the best line I've ever used and all that. Guess what? Try it on your rod. If it works, maybe trying an airflow line is good. So look at new technology is good. Some lines are going to integrate that without necessarily changing their name. But I would say most line manufacturers, they're just gonna change it. Like they're out there. Right now, like Scientific Angler right now is like, they've got so many lines, it's kind of crazy. But they are at the top of the top right now. So that being said, I've used other lines, like I used Airflow for a long time, great line. So
I think that's it.
Only one question online.
That's it,
Wow.
yeah.
Any more questions in the room?
So just to finish up, I do have a sign-up sheet. Like I said, I got stickers, fish, business cards. Let me know, look us up online. We're happy to help out. Shoot me an email, whatever. Again, we're there. If I don't get back to you, it's usually because I'm working. So yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, for coming,
Awesome.
speak to us tonight. Thank you so much.
Great. Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
Thank you for coming to the meeting today. It was a good turnout.
Father, I've been about 12 and a half.